Hello everyone, I'm ExtraCheesy87 and this is gonna be our discussion video for Trails Through Daybreak, which we finished up a couple days ago. Recording this video a bit earlier than I expected. I didn't think I'd get a chance to actually record this for a few more days, which means we're going in like noteless. Now I did already intend for this to be a bit more like off the cuff than some of the other discussion videos I've done. But this is going to be extremely off the cuff because we're noteless, kind of. There are some notes actually, but they're not really related to the video game. I just, we'll talk about it in a little bit. So, the way we're going to kind of approach this is pretty typical to all the others. We're just going to kind of briefly run through the chapters, talk about them, reevaluate them if necessary compared to what we originally said, and then we'll talk about the finale and the game overall. Most of the talk should be on the finale, because that's where I've got the most to say. So, alright, approximately 4 to 5 years ago, we started Trails Through Daybreak, is what it feels like. So the game took slightly under 6 months. I looked and the very first video was July 5th of last year. Oh my god, isn't that crazy? I'm recording this on the 1st, by the way. So not quite 6 months to finish, which is both pretty bad, considering, I think like the Cold Steel 4 Let's Play, for instance, took like 2 months to finish, but that was the power of being unemployed, basically. So yeah, just to kind of roll through the chapters. Prologue, if we were to rank the prologue in comparison to other prologues, I'd say it's up there. The only one I would say is probably like just straight up better, like no question, is the CS4 prologue. I mean, you can't really beat that one. That one's just like a little, it gets the bonus of picking up right off of a cliffhanger, and you get like cool shit at the start, just right out of the gate, with reintroducing all the legacy characters. So that one's kind of hard to top. But of the other games, I think it probably has the best prologue. It's very quick, relatively fast-paced. You get Van doing anime shenanigans basically right out of the gate, which is cool, I suppose. Not against Van having uber main character powers, but we'll talk about that more a little later down the line. Now, Chapter 1, I remember very little of. Now, that's partially because it's been half a year, but also I'm looking, man, it was short. Like, it starts at Part 5, it's done by Part 16, is when we fight Ida, because I'm looking at the playlist right now. That's going to be my notes for remembering what happens in this damn game. So yeah, Chapter 1, honestly, I mean, the main meat of it's just the confrontation with Ida at the end, which, other than some kind of weirdness over, I don't know, it felt kind of silly to, like, I feel like they should have changed the circumstances of Ida's death more, if you're gonna do the whole fairy, you gotta, because I mean, I get what they're going for. It's like, if somebody's suffering in combat, you gotta be ready to kill them, so they don't, like, either A, it's a kindness on the battlefield, and B, you don't want to get other people killed trying to save someone who's already gone, is I guess what they're going for, but that just didn't make sense in the situation where Ida's just like fading away into spirit dust. Didn't really need to stab her. It was kind of like she was already going to die peacefully. So that just felt kind of silly and a little contrived as a reason for a fairy to join the gang. Did also have the reintroduction of Walter, which is pretty cool. Kind of mentioned it before. Actually, I don't know if I only talked about this in comments or if I mentioned this in the videos themselves, but I think we did, but talking about how Walter's, like, his whole personality is different in these games, which overall I think is for the best, because I feel like you kind of reached a dead end with his character in Sky 2, where he was never that fleshed out. He was punchy man who likes to kill people. That was basically his personality. And there's not really too much you can go from there, and it does make sense for him to have mellowed out with, you know, him getting defeated in Sky 2, and it's been like 6 in-game years. Makes sense, you know? But it is kind of weird since he hasn't shown up at all in the previous game, so you don't get like a sense of that, like, oh, Walter's a little bit different now, he's more chill. It just kind of comes out of left field to see him be like all like jokey and buddy for the most part. Whereas when last time we saw him, he was like, I like to eat people's hearts. That's my thing. That's how I relax on a Saturday evening. In Chapter 2. What the hell happened in Chapter 2? I still don't know what happened in Chapter 2. Oh, that's Longport. Because I'm just looking at these thumbnails and I'm like, brother, what the hell do we do in this video game? But yeah, that's the Longport stuff. From what I remember, the lead up, like all of the periphery activities in Longport, like the quests and the NPC talking and stuff, I wasn't like that interested in. But it probably has one of the strongest like main plots of any of the chapters. You know, the thing with like Aaron's friends getting killed and the whole, I'm not super big on Aaron being a demon. It just feels weird, I guess. Like I don't know, because they never really explain it. Like, is it supposed to be similar to what Van is? But it's not really similar to what Van had. Like, I don't know. But it does have some really good character moments, very strong initial characterization for Aaron. You get to see him kind of like at his normal state, then you see him at his lowest, and then you see him kind of like lifting himself back up again. In terms of just like a pure character focused chapter, I think it's definitely accomplishes its goal the best. With it being like, hey, this is Aaron's chapter. It really feels like he makes his mark on it way more than any of the other chapters, which have a character they introduce, but the chapters aren't really about them. I mean, Fairies a little bit. Fairies would probably be the second closest. But chapter 1 it's just so short. Like, I honestly don't remember it being that short. You just don't really do all that much, I guess. Because I guess you're only in you know, because in all the other chapters, when you go to the location, you're there for like multiple days, but you're only in Cray for what, like the 1 day and night? Actually, are you even there a full night? Because doesn't the Ida shit happen as soon as you go to bed? Yeah, so chapter 1 is just really short. They definitely could have added like a second day in Cray, I guess. Or another day just in general. And I think that actually would have been better also if we talk about in the future, like since Cray's the place that gets obliterated. If you had spent longer there. Because I will say it is the location that like it's the most forgettable. The most notable thing about Cray is that it gets blown up. So I think maybe you probably should have had to spend more time there. If we're going to go back and add a little editor's note to chapter 1. Then moving on into chapter 3. Chapter 3 wasn't my least favorite, probably. The problem with chapter 3 is that it doesn't have a character. Like, Rosette is the new character, but she is not important for anything that happens in chapter 3. Like, at all. She's just kind of there. Which is probably also, like, the biggest criticism of, like, Rosette's character. She's the person that has, like, the least reason to actually be part of the gang. Because it's weird, like, she does and she doesn't. Like, on one hand, she's known Van, like, the second longest of anyone in the game, basically. I guess, like, except for, I guess, third if you count Rin. Or, both Rins, but of like, you know, the main party members. But the problem is that like their relationship is all like, yeah, they've known each other for a couple of years, but we never see that. And there's not even really that much of like a feeling of like, hey, they're, you know, old friends. Well, because I mean, I guess it's a more one-sided relationship where Rosette places more importance on the relationship than Van does, because for Rosette, it's like her only human interaction. So that kind of makes sense, I suppose. But yeah, just chapter 3, and then it being a rehash of Reverie was... why? It's like we're redoing the worst plot point from the previous game. Like, it's not even like you're doing a deep cut, man. So yeah, I would probably say chapter 3 is the worst. What would I do to change it? That's kind of a hard one. Because some of the chapters I feel like have relatively easy fixes. For like what issues I have with them. I don't really know what you would do with chapter 3. The only other is maybe make Judith more of a focus and have it be her chapter, but then it's like, what do you do with Rosette? I don't know. Because I mean, Judith is in chapter 3 some, but it's not really like her focus. One thing I will say is chapter 3 did have good NPC interactions. I liked walking around Tharbad and talking to people, and the mystery of the evil cigarettes or evil vape machines was kind of cool if they hadn't like beat you over the head with it. If you just delete that one scene where like the two girls walk up and are like acting weird and then they drop their evil vape machine on the floor, if you delete that scene, honestly, I think the chapter's a lot better. Like, just that one little change, because then you kind of have the whole neat factor of like, hey, you can actually figure out what's going on just by talking to NPCs, as opposed to the game just like hits you in the face with it. And then you're like, okay, I think that's what's going on. And then you talk to like one NPC and you're like, yep, okay, that's what's going on. Basil's basically kind of feels like chapter 3, but better. Like, what's going on in Basil is kind of whatever. But you do have the benefit of it, like, Catra being there is like more of a strong focus. Hell, even Rosette, like, she gets more out of chapter 4 than she does out of chapter 3. So on like a character level, they're definitely better with like the focus on Catra and the lesser focus on Rosette with her, you know, blowing herself up. Or, well, getting blown up. We're scrolling, trying to remember what happens. Oh, yeah, the nuke stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the idea that they're going for is fine. I just... you know, I talked about it enough, but I just feel like there's a weird disconnect with it being, like, actually nuclear technology, because we didn't really... like, hell, we didn't even really get in... like, I mean, they mentioned the radiation factor, but not really. Because that would be, like, the only main thing I could think of about, like, why making it a nuke would be interesting, or, like, why you would do that over just, like, hey, it's a shard bomb or something. Because I like the angle they went for, like, the idea of a domestic terrorist cell getting a weapon of mass destruction, and that being a bad thing. I think that's an interesting plot point, especially since it does play into the prey destruction later on, but it just felt kind of weird for them to, like, suddenly introduce this real-world technology that's never been referenced before and be like, holy shit, this is crazy, when... at this point in the series, their technology is so far ahead of anything that it doesn't really feel that crazy. And we've already kind of done things in universe that were metaphors or allegories for nuclear war, to the point that it's like, now we're going to introduce the real thing with no like, veil over it. I don't know, it just felt weird. We're loading. YouTube can't load the full playlist because it's too long. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Also, chapter 4 is fucking long, dude. Like, it's really actually. I guess maybe it's not that long. So it ends at 102, starts at. Holy shit! It is long. It starts at 72, so it's 30 videos long. That's crazy. That's too many videos for a single chapter, brother. Granted, I think chapter 5 is like 40 videos. But chapter 5, at least, like, there's more going on. Speaking of, moving on to chapter 5. Chapter 5, you could delete that shit from the game. Now, I know I just said there's more going on there. Chapter 5, after beating the game, it has no reason to exist. It should have been... That does not mean it's bad. I like chapter 5. It might actually be my favorite chapter. It's like the Mass Effect 2 of chapters. Like, it's cool, but it doesn't actually advance the plot in the slightest. You could completely skip chapter 5 and just have it be Prey blows up, time passes, Revolution Festival, oh no, Pandemonium, and nothing changes. The whole, like, Dante's orchestrated this event so that he could get stabbed and become a demon, just never makes any sense, because the explanation they give is that if you die in Pandemonium, you get resurrected, but he didn't die under Pandemonium. He just got killed normally. I mean, I guess the Genesis is in effect then, which that doesn't... You know, they didn't explain anything there either. Like, why the... You know? But, like, you really, really could just merge Chapter 5 into the finale. And not only do I think the plot makes more sense then, but it obviously streamlines the game to a greater deal. And one of the main benefits, I think, is that having it be, like, since the setup for the finale is only people Van has interacted with are not affected by the time freeze. So have that be the explanation for why it's mostly just Van and his, you know, children who have to save the day, as opposed to all of the superpowered super individuals. They're all frozen in time because Van doesn't know their asses. You know? So, like, you already have a great in-universe explanation for why the theoretically weaker party has to do all this shit. Because, you know, there is that disconnect in Chapter 5 where it doesn't make any sense for us to, you know, beat all the people that they say, oh my god, they're so strong, they're so strong, they're so strong all the time. You know, it's like Shizuna just gives up because reasons, and then Kasim's a dumbass, right? You know, and even then, like, even some of the other fights, like, we probably shouldn't have been able to beat Riksha and what's his name? Sal? I mean, I think Sal's a scrub, but, you know, the game does like to hype him up a lot. I mean, I guess you did have, like, your volunteer characters there, which helps somewhat, like, in the in-universe power scaling nerd debate. But yeah, I completely forgot about the intermission. The intermission was cool until Shizuna showed up. Friggin' just, God, I've talked about her enough. Just, come on, guys. We can have a little subtlety. But overall, yeah, the intermission's cool. I really liked it. Don't really have any, like, honestly, no real complaints about it whatsoever. Even if I do think Shizuna being the strongest Giga Chat who's ever Giga Chatted is kind of cringe, but yeah, then you have, I didn't really directly talk about the craze stuff. That's definitely like a high point of the game. In terms like of the actual direct plot, it's like the only thing that was kind of like a surprise. Like completely. Because killing off Dingo also, well, I'll say Dingo's death I don't think matters. Like, it didn't have that much impact to me. Like, he's in the game a decent amount. Which is nice. I do like that. Because, I mean, you had some deaths earlier in the game, which was a good change of pace. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit more at the end when it comes to the tone. But they were all characters who were, like, introduced and then killed immediately. So it's like, okay, that isn't, like... it's really easy to introduce a character and immediately kill them. It's much harder to introduce a character and then kill them, like, 100 hours later. It's, like, way more difficult. I think as, like, especially even just coming at it from, like, the creator perspective. You're like, I fucking created this person. I don't want to kill them. I don't want their story to end like this. But having a willingness to let characters have, like, shitty ends to their stories is a good sign, I think. I think it's a good bit of course correction so that we're going back. I think I said this in a comment, but we're kind of going back more towards the Crossbell games in tone, where some bad stuff can happen, but we don't necessarily, like, fixate on it in the same way. It's not like the Sky games were dark by any stretch of the imagination, but when it did get dark, it got pretty dark. Which is one of the things that I really quite like about the original trilogy, is that, you know, it was able to be dark without actually sacrificing its overall tone. And it didn't half-ass it when it was, like, time to broach the more serious topics. It went in there, you know? Which is why they stick so much more, right? Like, you remember Rin's backstory way more than you do Tio's, for instance. Even though they kind of went through the same thing. Well, I mean, Rin's is implied to be worse. But that's mainly because they don't really go into Tio's that much. They kind of just say, yeah, she was kidnapped, experimented on, bad shit happened. That's it. You know, you kind of have to fill in the blanks, I suppose. Whereas with Rin, it's much more like, we're going to go into this, we're going to give it the time it takes to really take root in your psyche. And it's the same thing for Van when it's revealed that he's was tortured. It's just kind of like, it's an offhand thing that's said and you see a picture of it. It's just not as impactful, right? Now, you could also make an argument that, like, it would be retreading old territory, which I kind of agree with, and maybe it's, like, gratuitous. But just as an example, I generally do think that, like, if you're going to broach a dark topic, like, commit. Like, don't half measure it. So yeah, moving on into chapter 4, chapter 5, it's cool. Like, I like the battle royale and everything. It just doesn't really make any sense, and it just feels like it feels like it only really exists as, like, a fake out. To be like, hey, you think this is the end of the game? Well, it's not, which doesn't work anymore. Like, it doesn't work in any games anymore because, I mean, a lot of times you have a general idea of how long a game is in, like, the modern era. And you have stuff like, you know, achievements and whatnot that can kind of, even if they're not direct spoiler achievements, but if you're like, hey, it seems like we're at the point of no return and I know I've done all the quests, yet I haven't gotten the achievement for doing all the quests, there must be more to the game, you know, stuff like that. You can't pull a Final Fantasy VI and trick people into thinking that they're about to beat the game and then they're like, joke's on you, you're halfway, nerd. Like, you can't really do that in the modern era anymore. Which is kind of like the only thing I feel like Chapter 5 kind of would have accomplished, is being like, oh, the game's over. Oh, wait, not really. So yeah, moving into the finale. And the biggest problem with the finale is that Almada's in it, and Almada are the worst part of Daybreak, bar none. They are the weakest, most pointless element of the game. The only reason for not just straight up deleting them from the plot is that the Cray explosion. I think that's the only thing that of like value to the plot that I feel like Almada adds. Because I really do think you could remove Almada from every chapter and they kind of play out the same. Like, just structure the game's plot as there is no real antagonist. It's just you're trying to track down the Genesis, and every time you go to a new location, either A, the Genesis is causing crazy shit to happen, like it resurrecting Ida's troops, or something like that, or it's just, you know, you get embroiled in the local politics of whatever's going on at the time. Like, you could basically remove Almada and just have it be the Genesis freak out and cause crazy shit to happen at all the places, and that's the antagonist. Or, like, you know, the conflict, there isn't really an antagonist. And really, you could just replace Almada with, like, just the idea of the racial terrorists that have been talked about throughout the game, right? And there actually isn't going to be a resolution to that. It's that terrorists got access to some crazy tech, blew up Cray, and that's kind of like the specter that hangs over the Revolution Festival. And instead, the actual big final conflict would still be the same, with Van having a demon inside of him or whatever. It's that, you know, as you get more and more Genesis, Van's like control over his demonic entity weakens, and eventually, you know, it breaks out, and that would be the finale, is trying to deal with the fact that Van's a demon lord. And that could also be a way to introduce all the strong new characters or some of the legacy characters, is be like, yeah, Arkride Solutions ain't really shit without Arkride in it, so you gotta lean on the legacy characters to take out, you know, the new super threat, which is, you know, Van being a demon lord. And I think that would work pretty well. Like, I would like that. It would be kind of a good way to maintain the quote-unquote lower stakes of a new arc, and not just have characters be ridiculously strong for no reason just because we have to maintain the same, like, power levels from previous games. Is have it be, you do have to rely on legacy characters or new strong characters to take out the big final threat. Because the first game in the arc is like the main time when you can kind of do that, when it comes to like getting, you know, quote unquote saved in a cutscene or whatever. That feels the most okay in these initial games, where it's like, yeah, the main party is a bunch of freaking children. I mean, like, half of your squad has never done combat until, like, you know, 6 in-game months before the end of the game. I mean, Catcher ain't fought shit until, you know, and like 2 months later, he's fighting a demon lord. Like, it feels a little ridiculous in that sense. Same for, you know, I mean, Fairy at least, you know, is like, grew up on the battlefield, but at the end of the day, she still basically should be the equivalent of like Fee from Cold Steel 1. I mean, like, technically even weaker because she's a bit younger. But, yeah, I think that's probably the main thing I would change is, well, 2 things. A, the more slight touch, which is just merge Chapter 5 into the finale, and just have it be that Dante's whole plan is to orchestrate Pandemonium so that he can get killed and get reborn as a demon, and then either A, get killed by Van, and then kill Van and get the demon core, or get reborn as a demon and then be able to track down Van and get the demon core, you know, whatever way it is. The main thing is just that Dante's plans to get himself killed to get reborn, which I think is kind of cool and would have more impact, I think, to see him like immediately resurrect and do his ha 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 you fell for my master plan. I'm so devious, as opposed to he dies and then gets like randomly resurrected and he's like, actually I meant to die. And then you stab him again and he's like, haha, now I'm a demon. I know I said I was a demon earlier, but now I'm really a demon. And I think it would also just help improve the pacing of the game, which is another kind of issue that's exacerbated by the fact that there's so much NPC dialogue in this game. Like, I think it's hard to really say exactly if it's more than, say, like something like CS4. I kind of feel like it is, because I do feel like the main plot in this game is extremely short. Like, if you were to just do the main plot and not do like any, or just do like the required side quests and no NPC talking, you could probably finish this game in like a fifth of the time it took me to. I mean, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but like at least, I mean, probably like 60 hours, probably less, honestly. And not even like rushing, like, oh, I'm trying to speedrun it, just like playing the game normally and just doing the main story. You could finish it so fast, because there's just not really that much that happens in the main plot. Which I guess we'll kind of cut into, let me take a sip of the sauce real quick. Cut into, you know, the overall length of the Let's Play, since this is my expertly defined transition and segue. So, Trails Through Daybreak is the longest Let's Play I've ever done in part numbers. The final total is that it is third longest in hour content. Number one, still CS4 at 198 hours. Now, technically, like 7 hours of that are the discussion video and the tier list, because those are both like 3.5 hours long. And then there's the books, which is also like 3 hours, but that's part of the game. I count that as part of the game. They're just like their own separate videos. Then second place, CS3, still at 177 hours. And then third is Daybreak at 150. And let me see, do I still have the webpage up? Just for like average part length. So average part length for CS4 was 1 hour and 14 minutes. CS3 was 1 hour and 7 minutes. And Daybreak is 52 minutes. So more videos, but noticeably like smaller on average. And that's mostly just because there's no super long combat videos. Even with us kind of doing like 2-hour videos at the end of Daybreak, wasn't quite enough to raise the average video length that much. But it did get a third spot finish. Beat out Persona 5, which was 147 hours, which is the longest non-Trails game on the channel. And then I also wrote down some numbers for some of the other Let's Plays I did, just because I kind of found it interesting. Just had a comparison. So Reverie Let's Play was 131 hours. Cold Steel 1, this is with the difficulty mod, was 124 hours. Zero was 67 hours. Now, the difference there is that I did not start talking to all NPCs until Azure. In Zero, we did some NPC talking, but basically just major characters, I believe. Like, we would talk to, like, if you had, like, a portrait. Like, we talked to, like, Rin's parents every time, for instance. But every minor NPC did not get chatted to. And then, to use another start of arc game, Sky 1, 38 hours. Crazy. I could do freaking, can I math? Like what, 7, 8 Sky 1 playthroughs in the time it took us to do CS4? And at the time, I remember when we did Sky 1, I was like, holy shit, this game is so long. It's 66 parts. I've never done a Let's Play even close to as long as this. And that was just like, you know, 30-minute averages. Now that was, you know, we did not talk to any NPCs, and I kind of rushed through the game because, well, 2 reasons. A, nobody was watching that shit. So So I was like, maybe I need to make it more entertaining by just doing the main plot, which doesn't really matter if nobody's watching it to begin with. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. But also I was like, I'd already played up to the end of the game, or up to the start of the final chapter, so I was like, I really just wanted to get to the shit that I hadn't seen before. And then also I threw in a couple other, just out of my own curiosity, some of the non Trails games on the channel. Like Persona 4 took 73 hours, which is kind of crazy. Now that one is also helped by the fact that I played the game before, but I did not know it was half as long as Persona 5. Yeah, did I do the math on that shit right? Because that seems kind of crazy. I don't even know if I... Oh, you know... Yeah? I did do the math right. That's weird. I didn't realize Persona 5 was that fucking long. I guess you have the Royal DLC. I mean, that's like 20, 30 hours right there. So I guess if you were to take that off, it's not that much longer. And I definitely probably yapped more in Persona 5. Like, just like random talking about bullshit. As compared to, you know, earlier when I was more like, hey, let's just play the game type stuff. And then what other games do I have written down here? Oh yeah, the longest Yeast game, for instance, is only 54 hours. That's Yeast 8. And then the longest non-JRPG on the channel I've done, well, is Yakuza 0, which is, I mean, it's not, I mean, it's got some RPG elements, but it's not really an RPG. At least not the older games. Which was another one that I was like, holy shit, this is so long, because Yakuza 0 was 96 parts, which for the longest time was my longest Let's Play in part number. It wasn't until Cold Steel 1, which was like 100 and something, but yeah. So basically the takeaway is that Daybreak is, honestly, if you probably, it's probably longer than CS4. It's maybe slightly shorter. It's almost as long as CS4 if you do all the NPC talking. Because CS4, you have to remember, was with the difficulty mod, which adds quite a bit of time, especially in comparison to Daybreak, like vanilla being so easy. So yeah, I think CS4, I mean, it's a 40-hour, almost 50-hour gap. Well, it's like 45-hour gap if you don't count the tier list and the discussion video. But yeah, just there's so much NPC talking. And it's all really good. Like, I would say probably the only game that I think is maybe better than it, maybe CS4, just because, you know, you got so many locations, and it's kind of the climax of the arc, and it's got crossbow in it. You know, I'm sorry, Edith, your ass ain't crossbow. You're pretty cool, but you ain't crossbow. You ain't got the noodle guy. Your noodle guy, he ain't hitting the same way. He walks the path to the noodle, but he has not seen it to its completion yet. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else really to mention? I guess we can go and transition into like overall thoughts on the game, since we kind of talked about the specifics of basically the finale. Just do something different, like, because one of the benefits I think of making Demon Van the actual main antagonist of the finale and just deleting Almada from the game is that, like, actually flesh that shit out. Like, because that's probably my biggest problem with it, is them being like, Van's a demon lord now, and then 4 minutes later it's like, okay, it's done. Oh, he's still in there, but they blew their load on what's kind of a cool plot point. Because really, there's two ways you have to do it. A, the way I get why they didn't do this, because they've done it 3 times in the series before, which is when Van flies off. It's like, oh no, we gotta track down Van. And that's like the setup for the sequel. Which I do honestly think would have been better, even if it was derivative. But I totally get why you didn't do it, because we've done it 3 times in the series before. Right? With Sky 1, Joshua ran away, you gotta track him down. Cold Steel, freaking Crow ran away, you gotta track him down. And then, oh yeah, Reen getting kidnapped at the end of Cold Steel 3. I almost said Skybell 3. If you're wondering why there was that pause there. Skybell, now that's a name right there, partner. But yeah, I just like the whole Van turns into a demon and then gets curb stomped 4 seconds later. It's just, and then plus it's, you know, they have the whole the Genesis are powering you up, but it just feels so unearned. Having the gang of children plus Bogard, powerless Bogard, it's hard for me to buy. It just feels like it's something that should be like not something the kids should be able to take on. And yes, I guess Van rejoins in his, you know, Grendel form or whatever, which is another thing they didn't really explain. I'm not, you know, because Dante's has the line where he says about like, oh, is this the result of Gnosis or Genesis or Resonance? So like, I don't know if maybe that's what they're kind of implying, is that like Grendel is separate from the demon inside Van, that's like a representation of like the transformations that you would see from Gnosis exposure, but it's like something that's completely within his control as opposed to the demon. I'm not really sure, but they do seem to be tied together because Mayor releasing Super Grendel also released the demon. I don't know. Just kind of ties into my other big complaint about the game, is that they answer approximately 0 questions in the entire game. Because it's not even a situation where it's like, oh, you know, you've got more questions than you had at the end than you had at the beginning, but at least some were answered, or like more questions were added than were answered. Like no questions were answered, basically. It's really just you learn that Van was part of the DG cult, well, not part of the DG cult, but was experimented on. But even that's not really an answer to anything because he already had the damn demon inside of him. But yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought. You know what you do when you lose your train of thought? You take a sip of the sauce. All right. Sauce has been sipped. But yeah. I feel like there was one other point I wanted to bring up. Oh yeah, my take on how Daybreak, actually, I think this might be the one and only game in the series, aside from Sky 1, that I feel like you might enjoy more if you played it without playing any of the other games in the series. Because one of my biggest problems with the plot is that a lot of it's derivative, right? Like Tharbad is a rehash. Like, I don't know, it's just like so many of the plot points are things that we've seen earlier in the series. I mean, like the whole Pandemonium thing is just like, hey, remember when the fucking Great Twilight happened 2 in-game years ago? Oh, that was crazy. Same with like the AI stuff in chapter 4. It's like, it's shit that we've already seen and on a higher scale previously, so it's just not as interesting or impressive to see it show up again. So I think honestly, if like on a direct plot level, it would be more enjoyable if you hadn't played any of the games in the series, because even if the plot points are not original in and of themselves, they would be original within context of the series, which is something that I think that's like different, right? There's completely original and then topics that just haven't been broached in a series before. And both are, you know, interesting in their own way. Because it's very hard to be completely original, but it feels really bad when it's like, hey, here's a plot point that we've already done. Let's do it again. I have way more tolerance for like, hey, we're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know other things have talked about blah, 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 but we're going to do our own unique take on it. More power to you. We're going to talk about blah, blah, blah again. Oh, fuck. Ah, shit. That's kind of how I feel. So yeah, now the main problem is you would be completely lost on like the lore. Definitely, like the world building would feel weird because there'd be like a lot of dissonance, especially when they, yeah, I don't know, because I mean, they don't reference that much of the prior events. Like I don't really know. One thing I will say is I don't feel like they really spoil that much. Other than like, I mean, you know, the Great Twilight gets resolved and, you know, I mean, I guess you would know some stuff about Rin ahead of time, but honestly, I will say, I do think Daybreak might actually be a decent starting point. Because I know people say that for some of the other games, and I kind of agree. Because, like, you know, the main problem I have with, like, recommending Cold Steel to start, is, well, I don't know. I'm not getting it. This is not the video for that. But, because, I mean, well, some of the things, just to do it very broadly, is that, because one of the strengths of Sky as like a starting point is that the tone of the series is not set in stone at that point. So like if you play Cold Steel like 1 and 2 first, and you kind of get the vibe that like, okay, the games are pretty bubblegum in tone, when you go back and play earlier games in the series, you kind of know to expect that. Whereas in Sky, the series' tone was not quite set in stone, right? Like Sky 1 is extremely lighthearted up until the very end when they kind of hit you with a curveball. And then Sky 2 is still mostly lighthearted, but occasionally they're still throwing curveballs at you when it comes to like, say, like the Hamel backstory, for instance, and then they, you know, murder Loe, and stuff like that. And then, of course, you know, Sky 3 has its dark moments as well. So, like, you know, because there's, like, multiple ways that those games could have gone. They could have feasibly turned out differently. And that's kind of part of the fun of them, is knowing, like, okay, like, how are we going to approach this? Is this going to be, like, a happy ending or a more, you know, melancholy, bittersweet ending? And if you've played future games in the series, you know to expect the happy, somewhat fairy tale ending. Whereas at the first playthrough, you don't exactly know. And that's one of the benefits to playing the games in like actual chronological order, as I see it. But yeah. That's still more of a, I don't want to get too much into it too, but because I'm not prepared to do the conversation on how do you recommend to get people into the series, because it's an impossible task, right? To really resolve that, and I'm not really delving into it. But yeah, so Daybreak as a whole, if I were to try and do a rough ranking, what games are there in this series? quick impromptu slight tier list. Main things that Daybreak does better than all the previous games. Side quests. The side quests are much better on average than in any other game, I would say. The alignment system is kind of, it's mostly whatever, but I do like having the little bit of choice and just a slight amount of extra content. And reactivity is not, I mean, it's kind of the word, but not really. It's kind of an overstatement. To the quests, I do really like that. And connection events are really good. Technically, I mean, they are just like bond events, basically, but the main benefit, I think, is that there's fewer of them in this game, and they're longer, so they're just more interesting, because instead of having like 4 minutes of time to tell a story or tell a little vignette, you've got like 8 minutes or 10 minutes, which you can do a lot more with it. And they do feel like a bit more personal. Stuff like, you know, like when Van and Judith watch the movie and talk about like what cinema means to them and stuff like that. You know, that's like more memorable than like, hey, Machias, drink some coffee with you, you know? No offense to the Mockster, but like, legit, I remember none of the CS1 Bond events other than the one where you drink coffee with Machias, and I have no clue why that one sticks in my head. But I remember that one. You drink some coffee with the Mockster, everyone's favorite character. But yeah, so those are probably the two main things that I think are an objective improvement over the previous games. Characters, pretty comparable. The only thing is, none of the cast were really like a standout that I'm like, they're my favorite. Whereas in the previous games, there's always been that character who I'm like, yeah, they're my favorite. I mean, you should already know who they are, but I guess I'll tell you if you're gonna badger me about it. CS3/4, it's Ash. CS1/2 is Usus. Crossbell games, do you even fucking, you know. And then original trilogy, I mean, it's Estelle, but not counting the main character, it'd be probably Oliver. But there's, you know, there was always a party member that I'm like, that's my guy. Well, yeah, I guess it is that's my guy, because apparently I'm a sexist. I like Estelle, though. I like Estelle. We're saved. We're saved. She's my favorite character. We're cool. We're cool. But, where was I going with this? But yeah, like, none of the main, like, if you were like, what's your favorite character? Like, I don't know. Maybe Aaron, maybe Judith. Which I don't mean that as like I mean that more as like the characters feel more even than they do in some of the previous games where there's like, there's been a stinker in all the previous main casts, I would say. Well, I mean, Sky's pretty fire. The Sky cast doesn't really have a stinker in it. Ellie is a slight stinker. She's just kind of boring and bland and is Chloe but worse. And then original Class 7, I don't know, Emma's kind of boring, I guess. And then, well, you know, new Class 7, we all know. We all know, at least who I think is the devil. But yeah, because I mean, there's not really like a character that I'm like, oh, they're my least favorite either. So like, they did a good job at like, at a level cast where everyone kind of feels cool and enjoyable and has nice interactions and characterization. So on the interpersonal level, I would rank Daybreak quite high. Plot, probably the worst in the series. I mean, Sky 3 doesn't have much direct plot either, but I enjoyed the mystery of Sky 3 more than I did any of the stuff that happens in this game, like, unfortunately. So, like, the mystery, like, the paper-thin plot of Sky 3 was held up by, like, the mystery of, like, what the fuck is going on. And that felt engaging, whereas in Daybreak, I never really had... I mean, I guess you kind of have that, like, what the hell's going on, but... I guess you never really get a satisfying answer to anything, so... it doesn't feel as satisfying. But overall, I mean, it's definitely, like, middle of the pack. It's pretty good for a start of ARC game as well, I'll give it that. The main misstep, I think, for it being a starting ARC game is that they kind of power scaled a little too fast, which is kind of because I'm not against power scaling. I'm actually like a power scaling defender, because a lot of times motherfuckers say, actually, we want a more low stakes story after killing God. I'm like, you don't actually want that, okay? It gets like boring really quickly when it's like, hey, you killed God, next time fight some fucking crabs. Like, okay, I just can't be as engaged. Like, come on, guys. Like, really? You expect me to think that you would want to see Goku fight the Red Ribbon Army after he killed Frieza? Nah, man. Bring in the time-traveling alien bug man. Alright? That's what the people want. We don't want to see him fight a bunch of weak-ass, you know, robot mobs. This is a video, man. Ain't it? Okay, so an hour was like my cutoff, so... Well, I guess we'll wrap it up. I would say... second best starting art game. I still rate Zero a little bit higher. Just because I like the plot of Zero more. The DG Cult stuff was like more novel then. I mean, it was literally novel then because it was introduced there. Whereas here, when it gets brought back up again, it's kind of like, ah, that's neat, but like I've seen it. And Yakum was not the greatest villain in the sense that he's just like, I'm crazy, but I don't know. I did find him more engaging. His whole like kind of hiding in plain sight, even if my first comment on him was that motherfucker's evil. But it definitely did have like a cool moment when it was like, hey, Yakum's evil. I was like, I fucking knew it. You know, that felt cool. And the whole, you know, I'm gonna slowly drug everyone is like a nice plot point, and you having to fight against the city and everything. It's cool. Zero's a damn good game. But like, what games would I say Daybreak is better than? Better than CS2. Probably better than Sky 1. I really have a hard time including Sky 1 in any rankings, though. It's kind of like the grandfather. It gets like Pokemon Red and Blue status, where it's like, it's not really fair to compare Red and Blue to any of the later entries, because they're all just like objectively better. But, you know, they stand on the shoulders of Red and Blue. So, it's not really fair to say Red and Blue is the worst game of them, because like, well, yeah, of course it is. Game was, you know, held together by glue and paper clips, but it was pretty cool at the time, even if Gold and Silver is just objectively better. Even if you are one of those that like, I don't like the, you know, the way the series went, or like some of the new Pokemon and whatnot, and it's all derivative. Even if you are one of those, Gold and Silver is just objectively better. And I'm not even like a Gen 2 glazer. But, I don't know, like what? I feel like the game's better than like third worst. But like, what would I put it above CS1? Yeah, I'd put it above CS1. So right now it's above CS1, CS2, Sky 1. But I put it above Reverie. Maybe? I'd maybe put it above Reverie. I think I would. I don't know. It's hard because Reverie had like... I would at least say it's even with Reverie, because Reverie has its good points, and Daybreak has its good points. But I think the benefit to Reverie is that it's more even, but Daybreak is definitely better on like some of the interpersonal stuff, and like obviously the NPC talking and whatnot, like all that, and the side quests are all better in Daybreak. The plot, I mean, Reverie's plot wasn't great, but I just really did not enjoy the main plot of Daybreak. I will say Daybreak, I think I liked it a bit more than Reverie. I think I maybe enjoyed Reverie more though, just because of like the fan service and the combat was actually kind of fun. Or, I mean, it's not that the combat in Daybreak isn't fun, it's just they have no balance whatsoever. And at least Reverie had the Abyss stuff, which made it more engaging for a while. What other games are there in this series? Like, I would definitely, like, Azura's higher, CS3's higher for me, I don't feel comfortable saying I like it more than CS3, but I also don't feel comfortable saying I like it less than CS3. So I think that's I'll leave it at that. It's equal to CS3 to me. It's not as good as, you know, I would still put like, you know, Sky 2, Sky 3, Azure above it. Same with CS4. I would rank CS4 a bit higher. What other games are there in this series? And Zero. So that would be like my top 5. And then I guess Daybreak would have a shared 6 with it and CS3. I think that's what we'll leave it at, since we're at an hour. But overall, game's good. I've got some issues with it. I do think the plot could have been really refined. I wish they'd either done things differently or been more original, something like that. Armada is lame as hell. They're so lame. It's like, just so lame. I mean, it's like all of my problems with the Liberation Front, but like just like two-folded. I mean, the Liberation Front, I guess, is more frustrating because they could have been cool. Armada, I don't know if Armada could have been cool. The Liberation Front, I think, pissed me off because like they could have been great, and instead they weren't. But now I'm the one rehashing. We've talked about that before. So, to lead into the future, I'm pretty sure we're going to fit in a Let's Play between now and Daybreak. I'm going to at least attempt it. So there will be some videos for the next month and a half. The caveat for that will be is that Let's Play will get finished, but if it's not finished recording by the time Daybreak comes out, it will be on the back burner and be a lower priority. That will still get finished. You know, I haven't let a Let's Play not be finished since I started recording again, in like the second era of the channel. Nothing's ever been abandoned, so if I start something, it will get finished, just eventually. But I do think I'm gonna have a decent amount of time to record the next 2 weeks, and the game's like, I think it's like 30-ish hours long, so I should be able to fit it in. So yeah, so there will be some videos coming. Don't know exactly. This video is not getting uploaded today. Probably the 2nd, maybe the 3rd. We'll see. But yeah, so we'll do Daybreak 2. It'll be enjoyable. Like, even the worst Trails game, I still had a fun time with it. If only because recording's fun. And if it is bad, I at least get to be like, are you fucking kidding me? You kidding me? You know, I get to do some... What were they thinking? What do you mean Dantes is a good person, Van? Judith? What do you mean we should invite the main character to watch movies? What are you talking about? You get to do some of that, which is fun. So you know what? Maybe I'm like, actually, I hope Daybreak 2 fucking sucks ass. Maybe it'll be more fun that way. I'm joking. But I am looking forward to it. And then there's the Sky remake, which is, I don't exactly remember when that's supposed to be coming out. Is it what, like later next or this year, I guess? Will I play it? Almost assuredly. I still haven't decided how we're going to approach that. Because there's 2 ways. Approach it from the perspective of I've played the game, I've played the whole series, I'm going to go into the assumption that anyone watching has, or do a more spoiler-free approach of like not directly talking about any of the plot points, which has its benefits, especially because I'm not like particularly proud of the original Sky Let's Play. So having a better starting point would be kind of nice, and you wouldn't be able to have that if I'm just like, you know, hey, remember that time, you know, fucking Great Twilight happened? Stuff like that. So I don't know, I haven't fully decided on how we'll approach those games, but I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, the Sky 1 remake is kind of like, that's cool. When Sky 2, that's the, I mean, assuming the remakes are good, of course. Like I'd be way more excited over a Sky 3 or Sky 2 remake than a Sky 1. But it still should be fun, especially because it's kind of rushed through, you know, those who were before we did the more attention to detail. But yeah, we'll almost assuredly play that when it comes out. And then, you know, other Trail stuff, we'll play Daybreak 3 or whatever it's called. When it comes out, eventually, or, you know, comes out in English, I guess I should specify. Oh, sorry, you gotta delete your nitpicky comment. I see into your mind's eye, my unclouded vision and Van's nose of imperial intelligence. But alright, overall, game's good, definitely kind of middle of the pack. Better than some of the worst entries in the series, but it doesn't reach those high highs of some of the standout entries, but definitely very enjoyable, quite good. I do like that maybe we're doing a little tone correction when it comes to like, hey, at least people can die again. And sometimes it might even be somebody you've talked to a few times. So yeah. I'm Extra Cheesy 87. Stay tuned for upcoming videos, which should be probably a couple days. I'm actually probably gonna have some time to record, like start that new Let's Play like right now. As soon as I hit the minus key, the minus number pad key, which is my stop recording button, I'm gonna slam that sumbitch. It's gonna be like, whoppa! I didn't do it yet, or else you wouldn't be hearing me. But like, I just slam it down, and I just slam it down, and then there's no more. Fade to black. There's nothing. Actually, won't even fade because I don't even know if we're gonna have any background footage for this. Probably not. Honestly, I think it's gonna be fucking blank screen o'clock. This is your bi-yearly podcast from me. Then I'm just gonna slam it. Actually, I missed. I missed because I was like, I don't want to hit. I want to finish the sentence. So then I redirected my finger and I didn't hit the key. So I'm just gonna slam it. Okay, so literally as soon as I ended the video, I remembered something I wanted to mention. I don't know if I'm gonna like fit this in before the end of the video, or if I'm gonna say slam it down and then we're gonna cut to this immediately. I haven't decided, whichever seems funnier. My alternate ending for Trails Through Daybreak, the way what I expected to happen, and what I think would have probably been better. At least I would have liked it more. So, you fight Dantes, you beat Dantes, Van gets his like demon powers back. That's the same, but instead of him like transforming and flying away, it basically is like things seem normal. You know, some days pass, everyone goes on their like vacations or whatever, but then when they come back, instead of Van being at his office eating cakes, there's a note there that's like, basically this demon is eating me up inside, and it's no longer safe for me to be around, and it's Van's going to go off to try and find out more about this demon inside of him and trying to control it. Which is kind of like what I expected the game to end with, especially with like the finale name, you know, For Upon Your Return, which is that they come back and instead of having a big reunion with Van, it's that he's off in the wilderness trying to you know, find out something about how to control the demon inside of him. Because like, I mean, you know, because the reason I would like that is A, it kind of has the same setup of like the demon is still important. It's an unresolved issue we still need to deal with. We kind of have like a bit of a cliffhangery ending there. It is a little similar to, say, the ending of Sky 1. The main difference would be that Daybreak 2 would start from Van's perspective of him being off on his own, trying to, you know, maybe he's investigating the lodge where he was experimented on or something like that to try and learn more about the demonic core and some way to prevent it from manifesting and him losing control of his faculties. Because I also like it because it kind of has a more like immediate, like a real consequence for him breaking the chains and turning into Super Grendel. Is that he does it and it lets him beat Dantes and it saves the day for the moment, but it has, you know, real consequences in that Van has to go away, right? So that he doesn't, you know, manifest and freak people out or, you know, lose control and start hurting people or whatever. And the situation would be, it's not that he's like running away per se. It's that everyone's off on their vacations and he's alone and it gets worse and he's like, I gotta do something. And it's less of like a self-sacrifice of like, I'm gonna chain myself away for all existence. It's more of a, this is something I gotta do on my own type situation. And then leading into Daybreak 2, you could have him be by himself, but then Van teams up with like maybe a new character you want to introduce or some of the more side characters, like, God forbid, I think Shizuna would actually make a pretty decent, like, Van is out in the mountains looking for the DG Lodge and Shizuna is helping him out because reasons. And then, you know, they find something, he gets it under control, and then you reunite with the gang, and then blah, blah, blah. We do the main plot from there. That's really how I kind of expected the game to end. And personally, I think that would be kind of neat, actually. Just kind of similar to the start of like CS2, I guess. Just different circumstances. And it'd be more of like a conscious choice as opposed to like something that was forced upon him. And I guess had that image in my head of like, you know, them coming back to the office and instead of seeing Van, there's just like a letter. That's really the way I thought the game would end based on the chapter name. That, or it's that he, you know, returns to like the lodge or something that he was experimented on and there's like something left for him. But, yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And now we will end the video. I'm gonna slam that thing for real this time. That was a joke slam earlier. Gonna be like, what?